have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Andy Hum. Welcome to Gay USA.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And in the news this year, as state legislatures kick off the 2016 term, some are determined to roll back LGBT rights in the face of 2015 gains in the courts.
Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. A lesbian widow in California is suing FedEx for her late wife's pension benefits.
Police in San Diego shoot and kill a man who was in a domestic dispute with his boyfriend.
We report the death of Minneapolis gay activist and publisher Tim Campbell.
And also the composer and theater director Liz Swados.
Yes.
Atlanta gets set to open a private LGBT K-12 school this fall.
And the cross-dressing performer Dame Edna has gone off on a rant unattractively against transgender people.
ISIS has executed a 15-year-old boy accused of being gay.
And a landlord in Moscow has shut down a lesbian bar.
Texas slashes HIV prevention to punish Planned Parenthood.
Andy here beside me is going to review a new movie about a sexy teen Christian birthday pool party.
That's what it is.
Okay.
And one cast member of Wicked surprises another with a proposal.
Okay.
At least we think they're both in the cast. They were in monkey suits.
But we start with upcoming legislation this year at the state level. You know, we have been celebrating for the last couple of years our victories. We're doing very well. We're optimistic about the future. We know that there are obstacles to be overcome. But never underestimate the relentless, shameless, aggressive drive of the right wing to roll back anything progressive. We see it in the gun control movement, and we see it in our civil rights now state by state. And let's look particularly at Indiana and its new term of the legislature starting. Indiana was in the news last year because there was a big dust-up over their attempt to pass a Religious Freedom Restoration Act to make sure that anyone could assert a religious liberty right to do anything they wanted and discriminate against anyone they wanted. And this isn't new, but for some reason it caught the eye of people, and there was a big backlash, and they were forced to amend it.
And it caught the eye of business interests in Indiana and sports interests in Indiana.
So,
which is even more important than business in Indiana.
And the governor, Mike Pence, got in a lot of trouble for having supported it, and it probably killed his thoughts of running for president. Although I predict some Republican is coming out of the woodwork at the convention, and maybe it'll be Mike Pence. We didn't discuss him as a possibility.
My goodness. He's not very smooth.
Yeah, so for...
And by the way, as we sit here and speak, Pence and some of the legislators are going to be coming out with their exact proposals around LGBT rights.
Well, they've started to introduce these. They've been threatening this for the last few weeks, and we talk about them at the top because they are getting specific. And they have introduced a couple of things. One is the now classic anti-transgender bathroom bill, which says that all people must use bathrooms that correspond to their...
With your birth gender.
Yes.
Basically.
This is insanity.
Whether or not you've even, totally transitioned, calling yourself, identify differently, no, birth gender, which is insane.
The only thing that makes sense is if you are going to have gender-designated bathrooms, that people use the bathroom that corresponds to the gender in which they live their daily lives, whatever that may be. That's the only standard that counts in anything. But no, they want to police this. Who knows how they're going to police it? And what that means is that a trans man full beard, fully transitioned,
Has to go to the women's room.
is supposedly required to go to the ladies' room. This is nonsense. And of course, there are fines that are going to be imposed, $5,000, I think, and so the best we could do if something like this passes is set up a system where we, profit from this.
Well, at least we're not going to have to vote on that in California.
Not yet. But the other thing that's being introduced in Indiana is another Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And this is an attempt to revert to the original plan last year, or worse, outlawing any non-discrimination laws that include sexual orientation and gender identity, allowing people to assert religious liberty arguments for any kind of discrimination. It's just
But there
heinous.
is a great coalition in Indiana supporting legitimate, useful, good LGBT rights laws, and it is backed by a lot of corporations.
Exactly. There's a coalition for that. But the fight is now underway again in Indiana, and we'll follow how all this proceeds.
In Tennessee, they're gearing up for lots of anti-gay legislation. One legislature threatened to stomp a mud hole on transgender people. I mean, it's violent language. Another said that God might destroy the state like Sodom and Gomorrah for leniency to gay people. So who needs ISIS? The Republicans have a supermajority there. And the Tennessee Equality Project says it could be their worst year yet. 2016.
Yeah, I mean, the backlash is in full-scale procedure, and it is important that we all remain vigilant. That's why when we see things like the Empire State Pride agenda in New York folding, essentially,
yes,
and a couple of organizations in Maryland are merging, we cannot afford to let these organizations die. We must stay vigilant and active.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Well, and they've stayed vigilant in Oklahoma City, where the city council voted 5-4 to ban discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, but just in housing. They're still fighting for protection and employment and public accommodations.
But they're
That's progress.
planning
That's great
to go
progress.
ahead with that. And,
Yes.
and there are bright lights. In Salt Lake City, our new out lesbian mayor, Jackie Biskupski, was sworn in as mayor of Salt Lake City, Utah.
With her wife standing by here, if you can get that
we have
picture
a
up
picture
there of there they
yes,
are.
Jackie on the left with her curly hair, raising her hand to be sworn into office with her wife by her fiancé by her side.
And also sworn in was out gay marriage, obviously, marriage plaintiff Derek Kitchen was sworn in as a council member at the same time. Now, everybody thinks, oh, Salt Lake City, my God, we've won. If we can win in Salt Lake City and run, but it's a very liberal city.
It is. And
Much more progressive than New York.
They had Rocky Anderson as mayor, who was very liberal. But these are both interesting cases. Jackie Biskupski, the new mayor, says that she was inspired to get into politics and activism by the kids at East High School, who you remember a few years ago were fighting for a gay-straight alliance. They were one of the first big cases, and the kids themselves demanded this, and when the authorities tried to shut them down, they went to court, and they achieved rulings that have been used ever since about the right of students to have gay-straight alliances. And Derek Kitchen, of course, was the main plaintiff in the marriage case for same-sex marriage in Utah, won that, and decided to get politically active beyond that, and is now a member of the Salt Lake City Council.
Yes. Finishing off on some states, Michigan, we've told you that there's a group out there called Fair Michigan, which needs to collect 315,000 signatures to get a ballot initiative to amend the Constitution to prohibit anti-LGBT discrimination. Sounds nice, but most of the groups are against it out there, and most of the legislators. And they say it's all well and good to look at polls that say, oh, people oppose discrimination against gays, and then when they get a chance to vote on it, there's
You
something.
have Prop 8 in California.
They call it modeling when they look at this, and they say it's not not.
Well,
Prop
who
8
knows?
in California,
Who
losing
knows?
in Houston, etc.
Everybody's an expert predicting stuff.
I'm not so sure what would happen to New York.
Oh, please. New York polling is one of the strongest strongholds for Donald Trump. the state.
Oh, my God.
But here's another little piece of good news. Reno, Nevada. The county juvenile detention center there has fired their volunteer chaplain because he is so anti-gay and anti a lot of other stuff too. But he regularly lectures the young people in detention there about being against divorce and abortion and premarital sex and homosexuality. And as a chaplain in a facility like this, you're supposed to counsel youth on their needs, not lecture them on moral standards like this. And this is, this is the problem with the system in this country where religion plays such a fundamental and taken for granted role. In the military, we've seen this. In prisons, it is just assumed that it is appropriate to have these people in these institutions. And the people who volunteer or get hired are often the most right-wing members of religion.
The city of New York gives jillions of dollars to religious organizations, and for a lot of the money, they say, well, we won't discriminate in the provision of services or in hiring, but they do. And nobody ever really puts it to the test. I think it's an outrage. Speaking of religious leaders, Scott Lively, who was on trial in Springfield, Massachusetts over his promotion of anti-gay laws in Uganda, is pleading poverty and begging for donations, even though the Liberty Council, the right-wing group that's defending him, is doing it for nothing. He also calls on America to adopt Russian-style anti-gay propaganda laws so that we can be saved.
Well, he's been to Russia to promote those anti-gay propaganda
go to
laws.
Russia. That's what that's what they used to say to us on the left. Go to Russia.
Well, this is because we have a story coming up where someone said go to Iceland, but we'll save that for a minute. In Staten Island, a local lesbian activist confronted Dr. Ben Carson on one of his campaign stops and said to him, because he has said in the past that homosexuality is a choice, "Did I choose to be gay?" And he said that's a longer conversation. And, I'm glad she confronted him, but
not a very good confrontation.
No.
Well, you got to work on your questions.
Give us a call. We'll tell you how to confront these people.
We have a lot of experience.
I would like to confront the star.
Can we finish on politics?
Sure, go ahead.
Bill Clinton was in New Hampshire, and he met diners at the Puritan Back Room in Manchester, which sounds rather oxymoronic or kinky, depending on your perspective.
That's your story?
Yes.
That he went to the Puritan back room diner?
I thought it was kind of funny. The Puritan
Who are
back
you,
room.
Donald Trump?
The Puritan back room.
Please. All right, well, the Golden State Warriors are doing very well in the NBA this year, but one of their star players, Andre Iguodala, is in a fight with his ex-wife over child support for their 6-year-old daughter. And the mom, in her court filings, asking him for more child support, started dishing some dirt on him, including saying that he says he doesn't want his daughter, 6 years old, to play basketball because that will make her a lesbian. To which I say, if only.
Well, it has worked in some cases.
Yes.
By the way, President Obama, in his plea for gun control, noted that rights for women and African Americans and LGBT people took a long time, so this may take a long time. The right wing is now trying to say that the marriage decision means that the states can't restrict gun rights just the way the...
They're so twisting things. They're saying that the marriage decision, by the Supreme Court says that if something's legal in one state, it has to be legal everywhere. That is such a misreading of the decision. The decision said, we have a law in this country, and this is the Supreme Court justices who are against it are saying this too, and the Republican candidates are saying, marriage should be a state decision. Well, yes, marriage is a state decision, except you cannot discriminate in this country. You have a federal law that mandates equal protection of the laws, and that is how this got decided.
Right.
Please.
All right.
All right, in
Hillcrest, San Diego, there was a case where a guy named Joshua Sisson, 30, was accused of holding a knife to his boyfriend's throat in a domestic violence dispute, and then he runs, and he's later confronted by the police.
The boyfriend's okay.
Boyfriend's okay, but he's still got the knife, and the police say he aggressively approached them, and they shot him dead. Now, you know, I've seen so many films of police all over the world who don't carry guns and can contain people with knives in different ways. We don't even seem to try. Look,
the cop who shot him had a body camera. They have not released the tape yet.
It's also his third fatal shooting.
It is, but when you read of the other cases, you think maybe he was called in as a sharpshooter on some of the other cases. It's hard to tell.
I just don't. I mean,
it sounds fishy that a cop has to shoot a guy with a knife.
Dead.
Yes, but we haven't seen the tape yet, but it's a sad story.
Right.
Twitter has new rules that they've issued that say they are not going to allow on Twitter attacks or threats of violence related to sexual orientation, gender identity, race, gender, you know, the whole list. So that's a nice little step forward, I think.
The New York Public Library is lifting its restriction on its erotica collection. All you got to be is an adult and have a library card. Now you can see it. You don't have to go through any special process. They do filter erotic materials on the internet at the library. France's National Library calls their erotic collection since the 19th century l'enfer, hell. And they still call it that.
And in other free speech questions, in Philadelphia, the Mummers Parade, a very famous annual event, had several participants this year who were mocking transgender people, specifically Caitlyn Jenner.
Now, this was a bit of a rump mummer group.
Yes.
Because the mummers march in the pride parades a lot. They're hired to do it.
And there are evidently LGBT contingents now in the Mummers Parade. So there is crossover.
And if you take a look at it, it looks pretty gay.
and it is a parade that often makes fun of people, but people say, yeah, not to good effect. It's racist, it's homophobic. So it's a controversy in Philadelphia. The mayor, the new mayor, and the organizers of the Mummers Parade condemned the homophobia and an attack on one gay guy who was a spectator who was evidently actually hit. So that's going on.
Okay.
Good news from Atlanta, where this fall in September they expect to open something called the Pride School in the local Unitarian Universalist Church for LGBT and other disenfranchised youth. It's going to be a private school with a tuition of $13,000 a year, but there will be substantial financial aid offered. This is the first of its kind in the Southeast. It is modeled to some extent after the Harvey Milk School here, but
it's going to be K through 12.
And it's a private school, and the Harvey Milk School is a public school that does not charge tuition.
Now, stop me if you heard this one, if you discussed it. Did you discuss the University of New Mexico student who described lesbianism as perverse in a paper critiquing a lesbian romance film?
No, Andy, tell me more.
Well, she said she was ostracized.
What was the film?
She said I don't know. She said she was ostracized for this and accused of hate speech, and she sued. And the chief U.S. district judge there first found a violation of her free speech rights, then said that the student had not followed academic standards, and she's filed an appeal to the 10th Circuit.
Well, I would want to know what constituted ostracization and
hate speech.
The accusation of hate speech. You know, if someone says something I think is that obnoxious in a class, I might ostracize them too.
Right.
But what were there academic implications? All right. So who ostracized her, and how did that take place? And was she penalized for her speech?
To be
or
continued
whatever?
at the 10th Circuit.
And what was the film?
We want to know.
And can we do a little education with this woman?
We hope.
All right. Well, let us
talk about some people who have died. And by the way, Everybody apparently, this is apparently like the biggest time of year for dying in America, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, there are more people who die between Christmas and New Year's than any other time during the year.
Okay. Well, one of them was Tim Campbell at 76 of cancer. He was a longtime Minneapolis activist. He was known officially as the publisher of the gay newspaper there for about 13 years.
GLC Voice.
But he was a very annoying local activist who has a great story starting in 1962 when he was rejected by the Army because they had a question on the questionnaire that said, do you have homosexual tendencies? And he had never had a sexual experience with another man, but he checked the box yes because he was aware of his homosexual tendencies, and so he was rejected.
And he was a crusading journalist, tireless in his covering HIV/AIDS and promoting same-sex marriage, even before most employers were extending domestic partner benefits.
In fact, he worked with Jack Baker and Mike McConnell, who famously got married in Minneapolis in 1980, and whose case went to the Supreme Court and was described as frivolous.
Yeah, and he was a big foe of censorship,
Yeah.
and he spent his last decade in Texas. And people who, in the mainstream movement who had to work with him said he was a complete pain in the ass.
Well, he set a fire at the Civil Rights Department in Minneapolis,
Yeah,
and he took
extreme.
a swing at a cop.
Yes, he did.
Which we are all taught not to do.
Yes.
But part of that may have been in his really early days because at some point he got sober and became a crusader for sobriety. He also was a great activist in pushing the news media to use the terms gay and lesbian as opposed to homosexual.
We had a big fight about that with the New York Times.
So Tim Campbell, 76.
And in New York.
Did we show his picture?
Yeah, there he is. There's Tim.
Yes.
There
Thank
he
you,
is.
Tim.
Okay,
Thank
now
you
we're
for all
going
your
to
work.
move on to a picture of Liz Swados.
Yes.
She was a groundbreaking theater composer, writer, and director. Died at 64. Survived by her wife, Roz Lichter. In 1978, she got 4 Tony nominations for Runaways with a cast of 18 troubled young people who were in the show, and they're bringing their stories to Broadway. And she did a lot of experimental work, a ton of work over the years.
Yeah.
But she called Broadway a museum that's not moving forward.
She was very revolutionary at the time in the 70s, very famous, unique, really stood out, and died too young.
Do you think Chick-fil-A is being persecuted? They got 59 health violations in New York City, and they weren't closed down. They closed themselves down for the weekend to try to fix it.
Okay, well, I would like FedEx to fix its attitude.
Yes.
It turns out there's a woman in California who is suing FedEx because her wife was a FedEx employee for 26 years and died 5 days before the Supreme Court's Windsor decision overturning DOMA. And when the widow applied for pension benefits, FedEx said, sorry, DOMA was in effect when she died, and therefore we are not honoring, we're allowed not to honor your marriage and give you any pension benefits. And the California, federal court in California said, well, yes and no. Yes, DOMA was in effect, but what the Windsor decision did was award pension rights to Edie Windsor retroactively.
Well, it wasn't pension rights as much as Social Security and estate taxes.
Yes, she did.
Those were the things that she won.
But that has been extrapolated to other benefits. The Department of Labor says the pension benefits under ERISA, the federal law that FedEx uses, should be applied retroactively.
Yes.
Because what the Supreme Court said was that the DOMA law, the Defense of Marriage Act, was unconstitutional.
Right.
So to claim that you should not owe anything because of DOMA, an unconstitutional law, would be illogical. So,
and what the National Center for Lesbian Rights is trying to say to you, FedEx, is you're a pro-gay company. You should welcome the opportunity to treat people fairly.
well, it's so fascinating how these companies, and FedEx has an 86% rating from the Human Rights Campaign, how these companies talk the talk but do not walk the walk. When push comes to shove, they do not follow through on their rhetoric, and they are looking to get out of responsibility for many of these benefits, all of which would cost them virtually nothing on their bottom lines. It's not like they're saving billions of dollars,
right.
and it's just really annoying.
Right. Someone else who speaks his mind was the judge in Utah, who ordered a baby girl taken from lesbian parents, Scott Johansson. We told you about him. He's retired. He got a ton of flack and reversed and recused himself in the case. He was a real first-class jerk, though. He slapped a boy in court in 1995, for which he got a reprimand. And 3 years ago, he told a mom to chop off her daughter's ponytail. And it doesn't say he got reprimanded for that.
Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Have I mangled that?
No, sounds good.
Well, he's retired now.
Yeah.
But Chief Justice Roy Moore of Alabama has not retired. He's the one who, fought for putting the Ten Commandments in his courtroom and on the courthouse steps, and eventually lost. But he is the Chief Justice of Alabama, and he issued an administrative order this week that reminded probate judges in Alabama that they are still barred from issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples because the Supreme Court ruling in the Obergefell case only covered Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee. This is a vast misreading of the Supreme Court ruling, and isn't Alabama issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples?
Well, you know Judge Moore. He wants to follow God's law.
Yes,
and he's the
does.
one who lost his job because he insisted on
and then he got
putting
elected
the Ten
again.
Commandments.
Why don't you become a minister instead of a judge?
All right.
International news.
Well, okay. Well, we'll start with a horrible story in central Syria. This is ISIS. They arrested a 15-year-old for homosexuality and threw him off a building. Horrible. Accused him of a relationship with an ISIS leader. So a Sharia court wanted both of them executed, and they said, well, he's a leader. We're just going to send him to the Iraq front to fight. So they've overruled him.
And there's some the feeling that the boy at 15 was being raped by this ISIS leader and should not have been consigned to death.
The UN estimates 30 men have been executed for homosexuality this way. Jessica Stern of Outright Action International says that lesbian and trans people have also been raped and killed by ISIS. She is calling on the UN to help relocate those most in danger. But the White House has rejected a petition to set aside 500 LGBT slots out of the 10,000 refugees, Syrian refugees, being allowed into the United States.
But I think is certainly sympathetic to those claims here and there.
We really want to highlight it, though, and we're not asking for special treatment. We're asking you to be very, very conscious of this.
Yes. But don't try to get married in Fiji. The prime minister there is in a little public tussle with a local woman who is arguing for legalizing same-sex marriage in Fiji. But the prime minister says, Fiji does not need that rubbish. And if you want to get married, go to Iceland, get married there, and stay there.
But be careful in Estonia. All right, they had a gay partnership law there that went into effect January 1st. But couples are advised to hold off until legal issues are worked out, divorce, inheritance, and other things, which the parliament has not addressed. So the couples can sign up these cohabitation agreements, but the notaries will not enter them into the National Registry.
And God help you if you want to separate, because then there is no structure for that.
All right.
But they had a proposed clarification. I can't remember what it was called, but the legislature had the opportunity to do the clarification of the law before the civil union law went into effect, and they rejected the opportunity to do that.
There are many states in the United States that have not revised their codes after the same-sex marriage laws, and they're holding on to them because they think they can still discriminate against us in other areas of relational law.
I think there are a lot of state laws that remain on the books even after Supreme Court decisions. There are still sodomy laws on the books, technically, in states around the country after the Lawrence decision.
They didn't revise the code about women being able to vote in Mississippi until a few years ago.
Or miscegenation laws about interracial marriage. They hold on to these laws because the local state legislators, even after a Supreme Court decision, do not want to risk punishment by voters for having voted to end bans on interracial marriage or same-sex marriage, even if the Supreme Court has ordered them to do so. So they let this stuff stay on the books because it's all about their local political life.
And it's amazing how in the early 60s, they did get rid of a lot of sodomy laws here, there, and everywhere across the country. Not in New York, by the way, because they were doing code revision, which means we're going to do a wholesale revision and get rid of these stupid old laws about, you can't park your horse in front of a hotel, whatever, those kinds of things. So they did vote for those things.
I did ride a horse down Fifth Avenue.
Yes, you did, as Grand Marshal of the LGBT Pride Parade.
A Grand Marshal.
Yes.
There were several.
Okay.
Another horror. All right, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of a horse's rear end, Dame Edna.
Oh, my God.
This is Barry Humphries, 81 years old, Australian.
Don't make excuses for old people.
Long-time performer in this character, Dame Edna.
Broadway.
I have seen Dame Edna
all
on
over the
Broadway.
world.
The first time I saw her, I thought this was somewhat amusing. The second time, I thought, I am getting out of here. This is horrible.
It's nasty stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, Barry Humphries gave an interview to the Daily Telegraph and said that trans women are mutilated men and called Caitlyn Jenner a publicity-seeking ratbag. This was in response to things that Germaine Greer had said, who was a friend of Barry Humphries from Australia, who has been attacking trans women. But he also said, Downton Abbey is so popular in the United States because there are no black people on it, although that's not true.
Yes.
And so he's, I hope there are no more comebacks, but I'm reading that he's about to make appearances in Chicago and Boston.
Watch out for Dame Edna.
And
not
won't apologize.
entertaining. Not entertaining.
No.
In China, a court has agreed to hear a case filed for same-sex marriage. Very interesting that they, homosexuality is not technically illegal in China, but they don't have any legal status for relationships and or much approval for homosexuality. But this is now going to court. The court has agreed to hear the case, so we'll see what they do.
Horrible story out of Agra, India. A 15-year-old boy who was bullied for being gay, doused himself in diesel and set himself afire. His neighbors and family ran out and extinguished it, but you need to, and he's got 40% burns, he's surviving, but how about extinguishing homophobia? Oh, then I read that story in the Times about in Pakistan where people who are atheists are getting slashed, they're bloggers, and just for espousing atheism.
Human race, failed species, driving itself to extinction, lickety-split. In Moscow, Russia, there was a well-known, popular, perfectly successful lesbian bar, quiet, down an alley.
Dietrich, it's called.
Yes, well, the lease was coming up, and the landlord comes into the bar one night and says to the owner, "Quick, the cops are coming. Get out, give me your keys, get out."
Yeah.
Everybody gets out, he gets the keys, and guess what? He took over this space, and no more lesbian bar.
The landlord would like a natural nightclub. Now, that's a translation from the Russian. I'm not sure if it's completely accurate.
Masha Gessen had a good op-ed in the Times again this week about how Putin's Russia is just becoming a total mafia operation.
Yeah. Well, for a long time. But lesbian bars, gay bars are not illegal in Russia,
It's
as long as they don't serve minors.
Yes, it's all the over 18 stuff.
these folks feel they have almost no chance of recourse given what the landlord has done to them, even though they're breaking a lease.
Yep. In good news from South Africa. The daughter of Desmond Tutu, we have a picture here, Mfo Tutu on the left.
Who's a reverend.
Yes, she is. Has married, on the right, Professor Marceline Firth in the Netherlands.
Well, Desmond Tutu's always been a great supporter, and now his daughter can
Well,
get
now
married.
one wonders whether some of that is because he knew he had a lesbian daughter.
Yeah, I can remember when he was a little hesitant on the marriage thing, but because he was always such a great champion of human rights and gay rights, LGBT rights.
Totally.
But he's obviously come around on everything, and he's terrific.
They are planning to have a ceremony in Cape Town in May, but they went ahead and got married in the Netherlands.
In Israel, the out-gay Likud member, Amir Ohana, was sworn in the Knesset. The whole Haredim members of the United Torah Judaism Party
Orthodox
left the chamber in protest. It might be nice if they never came back.
Well, how can they if he's going to be in office?
But Ohana said, the gay guy, he said, I'm here with everything that I am, the things I chose to be and the things I did not, and I am proud of both.
Well, he gave a great speech at his swearing in about his dedication to the human rights of everybody.
Well, this is Likud.
I know. Netanyahu celebrated his assuming office.
How about, okay. Moving on.
Okay, AIDS news?
Yes. In Erie County, New York, where Buffalo is, syphilis has tripled in the last 5 years, 257 cases. The health department traces it to apps like Grindr. Well, it's the way people meet each other now. 86% of the cases are male, and it's a national pattern. Condoms, anyone?
Yes, that's a good idea. In Texas, the state government has been at war with Planned Parenthood and has been cutting off funding where they can of Planned Parenthood. This is, talk about a war on women. It's just unbelievable.
Well, $600,000 in HIV prevention money that comes from the CDC but is administered locally.
Has been cut off from the Greater Houston Planned Parenthood.
Yes, and they also are trying to kick Planned Parenthood out of Medicaid, but the federal government says you can't do that. And then there was a story about Margaret Thatcher. The National Archives have been revealed when her health secretary, Norman Fowler, wanted full-page ads warning of high risk of transmission from anal sex. She said it risked corrupting public morals, said it could cause immense harm to young teens, and Fowler said, unless there's reference to anal intercourse in these ads, it will lose all medical authority and credibility.
I think that's what the entire Reagan administration said, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, just about.
We did a worse job here than the Thatcher administration.
Yeah. Now, all right, turning to entertainment news. We came across, actually, Andy came across something a couple of months ago that we thought was moving, interesting, fun, and we've been saving it for a lighter news week to show to you, and so this is the moment.
Yes, it's called The Saint of Dry Creek. Patrick Haggerty's, it's from StoryCorps, and you can read more about StoryCorps at storycorps.org.
StoryCorps is a PBS or Corporation for Public Broadcasting operation.
Collecting American stories all over the place.
So
anyway, Patrick Haggerty's story of growing up the son of a dairy farmer in rural Dry Creek, Washington State in the 1950s and coming to terms with his sexuality with some advice from his father.
It's a cartoon, and it's very interesting. So let us take a look at the Saint of Dry Creek.
I'm riding to school with my oldest brother, and on the way to school, I'm putting glitter all over my face. And my brother said, "What in the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm putting on my costume." He said, "Well, I wouldn't be caught dead wearing that." So he dropped me off at the school, and he called my dad up, And he said, Dad, I think you better get up there. This is not going to look good. So my dad drove up to the high school, and he had his farmer jeans on, and they had cow crap on him, and he had his clodhopper boots on. And when I saw him coming, I ducked around the hall and hid from him. And it wasn't because of what I was wearing. It was because of what he was wearing. So the assembly goes well, and I climb in the car, and I'm riding home with my father. And my father says to me, I was walking down the hall this morning, and I saw a kid that looked a lot like you ducking around the hall to avoid his dad, but I know it wasn't you because you would never do that to your dad. And I squirmed in my seat, and I finally busted out, and I said, well, Dad, did you have to wear your cow crap jeans to my assembly? And he said, look, everybody knows I'm a dairy farmer. This is who I am. And he looked me square in the eye. And then he said, now how about you? When you're a full-grown man, who are you going to go out with at night? And I said, I don't know. And he said, I think you do know. And it's not going to be that McLaughlin girl that's been making goo-goo eyes at you, but you won't even pick up the damn telephone. And I'm going to tell you something today, and you might not know what to think of it now, but you're going to remember when you're an adult. Don't sneak, because if you sneak like you did today, it means you think you're doing the wrong thing. And if you run around and spending your whole life thinking that you're doing the wrong thing, then you'll ruin your immortal soul. And out of all the things a father in 1959 could have told his gay son, my father tells me to be proud of myself and not sneak. My reaction at the time was to get out in the hayfield and pretend like I was as much of a man as I could be. And I remember flipping 50-pound bales 3 feet up into the air going, I'm not a queer. What's he talking about? But he knew where I was headed. And he knew that making me feel bad about it anyway was the wrong thing to do. I had the patron saint of dads for sissies. And no, I didn't know it at the time, but I know it now.
That's a lovely tribute by a son to his father.
That's a great slogan. Don't sneak.
Yes.
You'll ruin your immortal soul. That's certainly the way I felt it. I incorporated that into my life very early on. I really felt horrible if I didn't come out in certain situations, and I knew I'd feel worse if I didn't. So I did. I mean, it wasn't always easy, but.
On the other hand, some of us stayed quiet about some things in a self-protective mode.
Sure.
But what I really like about it is the father being forthright in talking to the son. And I've certainly said here before that my advice to parents is talk to the kids.
Yes.
Don't adopt this mode of, I'm waiting till the child says something to me.
Of course, sometimes parents will come on and say, you know, whatever you are, I will accept you, and the things. The kids
That's no good. That's not good enough.
But sometimes, let's just talk this through.
Okay.
Some gay kids or people who haven't completely sorted out who they are, get a little put off when the parent says, do you think you're gay? And they go, oh, no. I mean, they haven't sort of worked it out themselves. That's certainly true in some cases.
But at least they've been given, if it's said to them in a way that is supportive and loving, it gives them a chance to then come think about it and come back to it. The point I'm trying to make is that the burden should not be all on the child who is feeling isolated, scared, ignorant, and young. The adults have to take some responsibility here. And if you love your children and want to support them, one of the ways to support them in this situation is to say to them, you know, you're putting glitter on your cheeks, and it occurs to me that maybe you're not going to call the girl down the street for a date.
Are you trying to tell me something?
I wouldn't put it that way either. But I appreciate this StoryCorps story.
Well, I remember borrowing one of my mother's dresses for a Halloween when I just come out right after college. And,
Really?
Yes. I didn't shave my mustache, so I wasn't really going the whole hog or anything. This was for a Halloween party. And my mother goes, "Your father was very upset about it." I said, "Well, let him talk to me. What does he think I'm going to do?" I mean, but of course, I had just come out, and maybe they thought that was the way it was going to be, and who knows. But
All right.
that was my last time I wore a dress.
Well, a couple of guys who seemed to be okay with this showed up in backstage at the musical Wicked in Christmas week. The drama was not all on the stage in front of the audience. After one of the performances, there was a little drama backstage.
Yes.
Do you want to set that up in any other way?
Well,
Wicked is still, I think, the most popular show on Broadway.
it was right after the curtain call, and we're just going to show you what happened.
Okay.
Hey, guys, let's do a quick holiday photo. Okay, witches come down in front, and then wait. Do we have the monkeys come down right in front on the floor? Right here. Okay, perfect. All right. 1, 2, 3.
I'm beyond blessed to wake up next to you every day. You're the most intelligent, talented, handsomest best friend I could ask for. You allow me to be me. You inspire me, you dream with me, and you judge me only when I ask you to. I want to spend my life with you. Josh Daniel Green. Will you marry me?
Yes. You're in a monkey suit. You're in a monkey suit. I love you too. You're in a monkey suit. You're so beautiful. Oh. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Ain't love grand? It's very moving. I actually, you don't have to take my advice. I generally think it's a bad idea to make proposals in front of hundreds of people because you never know what they're going to say. Didn't you see, like in Working Girl, remember when Alec Baldwin proposed to Melanie Griffith?
Andy, that was a movie.
Yes.
In real life, people generally say yes because they know ahead of time
Yeah?
that someone's going to say yes.
He looked surprised, but I'm glad it all worked out, and it was quite touching.
I have a couple of late-breaking news stories.
Go ahead,
here.
let's hear it.
The president of Oklahoma Wesleyan University says he is proud to discriminate against transgender people.
What is the hatred here?
I don't know.
This is like a new hatred they've discovered because they can't discriminate as much against us. Well, they certainly can't discriminate against us in marriage. So like they're just lashing out at whatever they can.
The next story says whites and Republicans are the angriest people in America. Combine the two, it's deadly. But Stanford...
literally deadly. It's
Yes.
killing people. White people are, there's this big study about white people dying in higher and higher numbers in America because, we've lost our privileged place in society, which we never earned.
In the trenches with their machine guns fighting the advancing hordes of Moroccans or Mexicans or women
Embrace
or gays.
diversity. You'll be happier.
You will be enriched.
It's not always easy, I know, but you'll be enriched.
Yeah, it's not scary.
I want to.
Also, Stanford University is a business school is starting a boot camp for LGBT business leaders.
Oh, okay.
Those are my latest headlines.
Now let's go back to New Year's Eve for a second. On CNN, they have Kathy Griffin and Anderson Cooper. And Anderson Cooper is always supposed to be the uptight one. She's the wild one and all that kind of stuff. And they had Gus Kenworthy on.
Olympic freestyle skier.
Who came out this year. And Gus asked Anderson for a kiss. He says, just give me a kiss on the cheek. And Anderson goes, oh, we'll have to wait for the commercial break or something. We'll see. And I'm like, Anderson, Gus Kenworthy, for God's sakes. Go for it. I mean, loosen up.
Evidently not.
Lost opportunity.
Yeah. But maybe Gus would have better luck with Colton Haynes, star of Arrow on the CW network. He has just come out.
Also a star of Teen Wolf. Yes,
Yeah,
there he
there
is.
he is.
There he is. I saw a movie called, shall I talk about it now?
I have a few
Go
other
ahead,
notes
you
in
go ahead.
between. We could save
No,
that.
we'll save that.
First of all, worst movie of the year, in my opinion. Don't hate me for this.
Could it be Star Wars?
Yes. Yes, I saw it. Hated it. Now, for instance, Chris Cooper disagrees with me. He was here a couple of weeks ago. He liked Star Wars. It got excellent reviews, the new Star Wars. I thought it was so dull.
Did you
and so
ever like a
stupid.
Star Wars movie?
Sure, I liked the first couple of Star Wars, but I did not enjoy that. I also saw Joy, the new Jennifer Lawrence movie. It's it's not my favorite David O. Russell movie. I preferred The Fighter and Silver Linings Playbook, which I know you didn't like. I wasn't so crazy about American Hustle. Joy is okay. It's worth seeing. It's just not the best. And I really am growing to like Jennifer Lawrence. I think she's good.
I don't like much, but our friends referred me to a movie called, it's opening in New York this week at the IFC, January 8th through the 14th, called Henry Gamble's Birthday Party. And it starts out with a very cute masturbation scene. I mean, really cute. I mean, you have to see
Hard
it.
to imagine, but we'll take his word for it.
Which is followed by nighttime prayers in bed with this other guy. But it's about a closeted son of a Christian pastor, and it's all his birthday party and all of his friends from church coming over for a party, written and directed by Stephen Cole. The kids are very, cute, and there are lots of interesting characterizations and integration of gay and lesbian issues. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me, this is going to sound highfalutin, but almost like a Chekhov play, the way it tracked all the characters through a scene in a house. And here is the trailer for Henry Gamble's Birthday Party.
Doesn't look like Chekhov.
There's the birthday boy. How'd you guys sleep? Fine. Great.
Happy birthday, sweetheart.
Thanks, Mom. Autumn birthday breakfast. Autumn!
Yeah, it's just like my brother and his friends and like some people who work with Dad.
Megachurch friends or school friends?
Both. Why?
What's up? Oh, cool.
Henry, having a good time?
They're having a great time out there. Yeah, all the other kids are.
Hey,
Bonnie.
Hey, Logan. How are you?
I didn't know y'all knew each other.
Yeah, we go to church together. How do you two know each other?
We're in band together, idiot.
Stop. Sorry.
So, how's your party going?
Good.
Good.
Are you churched?
Am I churched? So how exactly does that work?
What do you mean?
Like biology at a Christian school?
I don't know if it's allowed, but I brought some wine. Shh, don't tell anyone.
What's this under the sink?
Oh, shoot. We have to do cake.
I don't know why these girls need to wear so little.
Yeah, it does seem like they're getting skimpier.
You guys ready for camp in a couple weeks? Are you going, Ricky? Keith will have me back.
How's he been doing, Rose?
Oh, he has his good days and his bad days.
I don't think he's gay. I think he's just confused.
Wait, so do you have like a problem with it?
Surely you don't.
Wait, what does that mean?
Seems like there's like a lot of struggling going on, like bad influences, sexual confusion.
Bob? It's Ricky. Can I speak with you for a minute?
Something happened to me recently.
Where have you guys been?
We've just been talking.
What are you doing here?
What do you mean?
Will you lay off her? Do whatever you want, Grace.
Excuse me.
mostly takes place at a pool party, and it's very nicely observed.
Okay. I want to recommend another movie I saw in preview called Troublemakers, the story of land art. Are you familiar with things like Spiral Jetty in Salt Lake? It's artists in the 50s and 60s and 70s who decided to break out of the frame, basically, in galleries, and they wanted to make major projects out in the land. There's a lightning field in New Mexico that's very famous, and this spiral jetty thing in the middle of the Great Salt Lake. And it's it's the story of these artists, and it's not particularly gay, but it's an interesting documentary.
It's an old story, like those crop formations in all over the world.
That's an interesting version.
Done by the Martians. We haven't seen that movie yet.
Well, Troublemakers, the story of land art, opens at the IFC Center Theater this week, Friday. Tomorrow in Manhattan.
And you know, last week I ran through
and it's made by James Crump. This is, I guess, in part why it's interesting, who made Black, White, and Gray, the story of Robert Mapplethorpe and Sam Wagstaff. So this is his film.
Last week I ran through my London reviews, and they are online now at gaycitynews.com. You can go there, but I want to alert you to the fact that the Kenneth Branagh, Judi Dench Winter's Tale is going to be in cinemas all over the world later this month. And you can go to branagh.theaterlive.com. If you know how to spell Kenneth Branagh, you can spell that, but theater is with R-E, the British spelling, to find out where it's playing near you. And similarly, Jane Eyre, which I loved at the National Theater, is also coming to cinemas in late January. Go to ntlive.com.
And as we tape on Wednesday afternoon, I'm looking forward to something tonight on ABC, the second season of American Crime. Did you see the first season?
I did not.
Well, they're doing it now as a sort of repertory thing. They had a cast that did a story about a murder, and there were a lot of storylines about race, and it was a very, very interesting series last year. So they brought back the same cast, but to do an entirely different story. And the cast is people like Felicity Huffman and Timothy Hutton and Regina
I saw them on
King,
The View this morning.
Hope Davis, Lily Taylor. And the third episode this year is directed by Greg Araki, who has done some wonderful work on AIDS films. This one is about a charge of rape of a young boy by the basketball team at a private school in Indiana. So it's going to be a lot about male rape, homophobia. Is this true? Is it not? Race is involved. And it's, you know, art is imitating life as we have these. The latest is this St. George's Prep School in Rhode Island, where there's stories of years of sexual abuse of students. So American Crime on ABC, and that's it for us.
Don't sneak, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.